Thank you very much, Mr. Christopher Fritchie and the gentlemen of the band for that beautiful introduction. You know how extraordinary it is to have music every week that is tailored to our theme. I mean, that's incredible. It must take a tremendous amount of work. And so thank you for that, Christopher Fritchie. Good morning. Talking of themes, for many years in our movement, Centers for Spiritual Living, it's been the tradition for us to use the month of January to get back to the basics of our teaching, especially as presented in the first 4 chapters of the book we use to study with, The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. And the first 4 chapters are these: the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. After some time, the tradition of going back to these first topics in January started to fall away. I think perhaps centers became saturated with the practice. However, because the theme for this month is the value of spiritual living, we thought as a movement it might be a good idea for us to return to that tradition. And as a result, many centers in the United States and international territories are using this month, January, to refocus on the basics of our teaching, which in my opinion is a great way to start a new year. Refocus and refresh. Review the basics, whether that's for spiritual living or for your life or for your relationship or for your work or for your business or for your family. I think it's a good thing from time to time to take a moment and ask, what are the basics of my approach to life? And have I stayed on track with them? And if not, do I need to freshen things up a bit? Refocus. I was thinking of this idea of freshening things up, because sometimes things get untidy. I was thinking about it. I was looking at my porch. I've got a porch in my house. And there's this post, and there's a vine that grows up it. And sometimes, if I'm not paying attention, that vine just takes over everything. Not only that, once I start to notice the overgrowth of the vine, I see also those spiders have been busy. Webs everywhere, and they don't clean up. And they leave this grisly trail, bizarre trail of insect, bug carcasses that they've been devouring, and they don't clean it up. And not only that, the wintry cold comes along and the wet causes moss to grow on the bricks to the point where the original cuteness of the porch gets lost. Well, it's just covered up, really. I mean, all that it needs, the foundation is still there of the beauty. It just needs maintenance. I think life is like that. From time to time, things need to be cleaned up and refreshed. Like my idea of God, I notice from time to time, I wander astray from the original beauty of the idea. I've got to come back from time to time. Or like my idea about my relationship to life, or my idea about how to use my beautiful imagination. It could be that I take it for granted. It could be I stop thinking about it. It could be that I let vines grow out of control. And so from time to time, it's a good thing for me to come back, take a moment and think about the thing itself. Now, I remember the moment when I first read that phrase, the thing itself, to describe God. It was a little alarming for me to call the divine a thing. You see, because I was raised Catholic. And I was raised to think of God as, the Father of creation, not a thing. And so I had some nervousness about it being disrespectful as an idea. But I studied the first 4 chapters of The Science of Mind, and as I read through it, I came to realize that rather than being disrespectful, respectful. The phrase, the thing itself was mind-expanding for me. It was very useful. In fact, it was more respectful to me because it seemed to acknowledge the difficulty of what I was trying to do, what we're trying to do. And that is to describe something that cannot be described. In some way, it seemed to point to the bigness of the idea. And so in a way, studying the science of mind for me had the effect of clearing away cobwebs, of letting the original beauty of the idea of what God might be. It helped me expand out from my childhood idea of a benevolent father into something beyond gender, beyond form, into something larger that would keep me studying and growing ever since then. I had to grow up past my original idea of the divine because my early idea was, well, slightly superstitious and a little immature. It was appropriate to my age and my spiritual development at the time, but it was keeping me stuck in this parent-child relationship with the universe. Perhaps the most powerful thing I ever did through my studies of science of mind was to set God free from the idea of a human personality. A personality that was, in my childlike understanding, vengeful, selective, easily offended, regional, jealous, unpredicted. I mean, as a child, I was pretty much terrified of God. Terrified of offending God. And I couldn't understand how it was that God favored some over others. Or how it was that sincerely offered prayers by people who were suffering remained unanswered. Or how it was that terrible things could happen to good people. I think another evolutionary tremendous change took place in me when I was invited through my studies to drop the idea of pleading with God about any of this. To completely drop the idea, let it fall away, the idea of asking God for a favor. I had to let it all fall away to make room for a different idea, a different kind of relationship, something larger. And I did. And still it didn't answer all of my questions, but it did continue to make me grow and think and lean into it. Oh, this journey of leaning into it, it's so wonderful. And this is how it's described in this month's recommended reading, Discover a Richer Life. He writes, "For too long we've been dividing ourselves and the universe into small, unrelated parts. We have been so busy doing this that we have overlooked the fact that everything is part of one stupendous whole." And then he continues to say, we've separated spirit and mind. We've separated mind and body. We've isolated living things from the very thing that gives it life. And then he writes this beautiful thing. There comes a time when it is necessary to try and put things back together again. Oh, I remember the beginning of that journey, and for many of you who have been students of this teaching for a very long time, I am guessing that you can remember when that journey started for you, when you began to put things back together again, so to speak. You know, people tell me that when they start that journey, their lives change. They tell me that. When they start thinking of themselves as a part of this universe rather than apart from it. Now, why would such an idea change someone's life? Why did your life change if it did? I don't know why it does for other people. I can answer for myself, and I can also share with you what I've observed in people who take our classes where they study these ideas. Because we ask people in the middle of the class, what's changing for you? And the most common answer is, I'm becoming more peaceful. People say, it's as if something has finally been cleared up, cleared away. Some people say, I think I'm becoming more thoughtful or mindful. And other people say, I feel like I'm more resilient. I can meet life. And it's not that the difficulties or the cobwebs of life all disappear. It's not like they've no longer got any questions, they've got all the answers. No, it's more like they've become better able to cope, better able to accept, because they see themselves as a part of this universal life and not apart from it. I love asking people halfway what's changed. I mean, I'd like to hear from you. What's changed in your life as a result of studying Science of Mind? And you can write to me at edward@cslsr.org and tell me. I'd love to hear. People tell me they've noticed their thinking. They've noticed the quality and the content of their mental activity. And then they start to ask themselves, if I am part of this creative life of the universe, what is the impact my thinking is having? In other words, they begin to change the way they think. They begin to change their consciousness. And that is the way it works, through a change in consciousness. At least on a personal level for you and me, we could say the thing itself, the creative power of the universe, works through us by responding to what we think and feel and dream, our emotions, our feelings, our intentions, our visions. It works through us. This was one of the big ahas for me in studying metaphysics. The realization that you and I, we are doing all of this together. That through our combined dreams and our combined visions and hopes, we're doing this together. That life isn't being done to us. No, it's more like we are weaving this experience together. And it was an aha for me, because I realized if we are weaving life this one way, what is to stop us from weaving it in a completely different way? Now I am very confident that change comes when we individually and collectively pick up our attention from wherever it is and put it somewhere else. I'm certain. I'm very confident that when we begin to shift, when we find more value in harmony than in discord, in helping than in harming, in kindness than in spitefulness, that we will have changed the pattern that we are using to weave this experience, and we will experience a different reality, I'm sure. Another thing I learned at the Center for Spiritual Living is that change comes more swiftly when my mind is for something than when my mind is against something. Which is why I love the Women's March on Washington movement so very much, because it is not because it is not an anti-anything movement. It is a movement for something. It is a movement for people to get together and to stand for love and respect and inclusion. It is a movement that advocates democracy, and human rights and dignity and justice for all. It is not against anything. It is for something. And when I learned the subtle but important difference of being for something in comparison to being against something, oh, my life started to really change because the nature of my mind was changing. You see, before I learned that, I think I believed that in order to change something, I had to reject it and resist it and fight it. Like when I started to become aware that I needed and wanted to release my old idea of God, I started off by being angry and rejecting my religion of origin and making an enemy out of anyone who had anything to do with it. Oh, the big change took place for me when I stopped fighting in my mind, stopped fighting life, stopped fighting ideas, and turned instead to where do I want to place my attention? I want to place it on this idea of a creative universal mind that I am part of. I want to start exploring the idea that I belong to life. Less that I'm on trial, and more that I'm on an adventure in life. And interestingly enough, as I began this inquiry and considered myself to be part of life, the more reverence and wonderment for life grew. You might say, I became truly religious. I became an enthusiastic worshiper of the divine, not because God demanded it, but because it was so marvelous to feel the meaning of the words, I live and breathe and have my being inside of the thing itself. That was radical. It changed everything. And still, it didn't answer all of my questions. You know, questions like, why my best friend's nephew was born last week with a birth defect? Like, why do some people hate other people because of the color of their skin? Like, for example, why certain things just can't be changed. You know that, right? That some things can't be changed. I struggled with that one, didn't you? I was at the airport and a young lady came up to me to ask me for directions to the right gate for her flight. And I realized as I was answering that my eyes were in line with her shoulder. I mean, she was like 7'100", you know. And as I looked up to her to give her the answer, she looked down at me with these beautiful blue-gray eyes, and I was just awestruck, and I realized in that moment I wanted to be her. The thing is that no matter how much I want to be 6 foot something with blue eyes, I'm always going to be this high, actually a little shorter, I'm shrinking, with brown eyes. Some things simply are the way that they are. I learned in studying science of mind that although some things cannot be changed, that many, many, many other things can be changed. And knowing the difference between the two is the foundation of freedom. And the difference between what can be changed and what cannot be changed is in where does the change take place. And as soon as I learned from my studies to work on the changes within me, that's when I began to experience real change in my life, in the quality of my life experience, in the experience of life, in my optimism, in my confidence. And that's the way it works. So how does a person apply this to their life? How does a person become a better vehicle for the expression of good in their life? Well, here's what we propose in our teaching at the center. That a really effective place to begin is by clearing the cobwebs in your own mental space. Because doing so will truly change the way you show up for others and for the world. And how does a person clear up their mental household? Well, here are some suggestions. Number one, by really looking at where you are giving your attention. Two, by really evaluating how do you feel about the way you are using your divine life. And if you do these things and other ones like them, I think you will discover what we all discover. And that is that there are some things in life that cannot be changed. But I can't let that steal my hope. I can't let that prevent me from changing the things that can be changed. If I do let it stop me, it traps me in bitterness and regret. I don't want to live there. I can change my self-talk. I can change how optimistic I am. I can change my predictions for the future. I can change what I'm fascinated in and what I give all my time and energy and attention and money to. I can change my habits. I can change. And when my and your mind, when my mind's activity regularly conjures up tears of joy and hope, regularly causes hearts around me to swell with encouragement, regularly leads me into loving choices, and regularly connects me to what is heart and meaning, I think then we can expect things to change around us. Ernest Holmes says about it, consciously or unconsciously, we are weaving the destiny of our fate, at least temporarily, on the loom of our consciousness. It is merely a question of where we get the pattern from. Shall it come from fear, strife, and disunity, or shall it be drawn into our consciousness from a higher source, from the thing itself? See, I love that, and it's a wonderful idea for us to take into prayer. Let me draw the pattern for my weaving from a higher source. Beautiful. Let us take that into prayer by breathing in together and exhaling. As we turn our attention to that divine presence, which is beyond all description, and yet we use words like eternal and immortal to create the felt experience of that which is everywhere present, God, the living Spirit Almighty, so that we may draw from it, through our own consciousness into our experience, the perfect pattern of love. So that we may draw, through our own consciousness from it into our words, the perfect harmony. So that we may dwell in our unity with each other through it and sense the terrific mystery of this beautiful life we are living. And our prayers together this morning help to reestablish us in hope. Help to reestablish us in our true identity. And in so doing, we let all other considerations fall away. so that the original beauty of who and what we are may shine through our words, our thoughts, how we see each other, how we interact, how we contribute to the world, and help us to clarify what we stand for. And as we pray this way together, we trust also the spiritual laws that govern the universe to respond to us as they always do, so that we may walk forward in this world free from anxiety, free from manipulation, free to be who we are, living beings in service to an idea of love. In deepest gratitude, I release this word of prayer, and together we say, and so it is.